Posted by Rain the Yame. I met my son 10 years before he was born, in a dream. So, as the title says, I met my child a decade before he was born. When I was 16-17, I was feeling deeply suicidal. I wanted to die and be put out of my misery. It was a very dark time for me and I was close to going through with it. One night I had a very clear dream. I could see a man in his 20s with dirty blonde hair staring at me from a bench. He had a short beard/stubble. He said, loudly, "Mom, you have to get yourself together because I'm coming soon." It's odd because I have dark brown hair and he didn't look how I'd imagined my son would look. I woke up and this dream startled me. It felt so real, crystal clear. I can still see him and hear him now. A year after that dream, I met his dad who also had dark brown hair. It was an abusive relationship for years and I always wanted to leave, but something always happened that made me stay. Fast forward 8 years and I became pregnant. I instantly knew it was a boy. He was born, and he'll be 2 this year. His hair is dirty blonde and I just know that he is the same person as the man in my dream. He looks just like the toddler version of him. Has anyone else had an experience similar to this? I feel bothered by it on a weekly basis. It feels like I met my, now, ex just so that he could be born. I can't help but ask why? Why did he choose me? Why choose a horrible dad? I honestly feel like he picked both of us. It would be amazing to hear similar experiences just so that I know I'm not out of my mind. Edit, I forgot to mention, I once had a similar dream with my childhood sweetheart. One of the reasons I was depressed in my teens was because he moved to Japan, and I remember being there with another woman and my ex in the background. I told her, very clearly, was like myself speaking into my ear, it was so loud, to look after him for me, and she said, "I will." She's waking up now, not sure who she was talking about, but maybe it was me asleep IRL because I woke up a second later. These are the only 2 dreams I've ever had that have been that clear, with real intent/lucidity behind it. Posted by Wei Kiwi. Dad appeared in my dream to say goodbye. When I was 11, my dad died. We knew he was going to die, terminally ill, lung cancer. His days were numbered, and yet when he moved into hospice care, we made plans to go visit him immediately after school the next day. He died at 2:46 p.m., moments before my school day ended, and we never made it to the hospice to say goodbye. I think he wanted it this way, to die peacefully and not in front of us kids. His departure plagued me with grief, and I felt robbed of saying goodbye to him. I'd often wake in the night and cry myself back to sleep because I missed him so much and wanted to tell him I loved him one last time. About 5 years after he passed, I had a dream. I was at train station and Dad was a passenger on the train. I was standing on the platform and the train window was open so we could talk to one another. Dad told me he loved me, but that it was time for me to let him go. I told him that I loved him and missed him and never got to say goodbye and begged him not to go and to get off the train and stay with me. But he said he had to go, and told me it was okay and he was happy and I could stop hurting because he was no longer hurting anymore. Eventually the train started slowly rolling away, on an upwards track traveling into the clouds. We smiled and cried and waved to each other until the train was so far away I could no longer see my dad through the window, and the train disappeared into the clouds above. When I woke, for the first time since his death, I felt peace. Like I'd seen my dad and said a proper goodbye. I had closure. My dream was crystal clear, and even today, 25 years later, it's still as clear in my mind as the day I had it. Posted by you/Mrs. Xalt. Husband and I realize we've seen it. To start with, my real parents died in a car accident and I got adopted from when I was around the age of 4. I've always seen this tall, dark figure at the end of my bed or corner of the room in my dreams. It didn't have a hat or a brim, and it was always darker than the room it was in. It happens about 3 times a week or if I go anywhere new or overnight. Each house I've lived in, I've seen it. If I go to a friend's overnight, then it would be there too. I always thought it was just me being crazy and overthinking things. There was no way I could tell people and I didn't want to come off as that weirdo who sees things. While I was dating my husband I saw it at his, and didn't say anything. We're now married and we have our 5-month-old. Literally the other day I told him a weird dream I had of the black tall thing coming up the stairs, it opening the door and just staring at me and our baby. He turned white. He said he had the exact same dream that night. We shared the same dream. Upon talking he admitted he had seen it for a while. He only saw it when he started dating me and obviously sees it often now in whatever house we are in. We have recently moved too and he saw it the first night. In the hospital I gave birth in, because of the big C word, my husband had to go home on his own the very first night. I got moved to a ward and nurses would come check on myself and baby, come do my blood pressure and just take care of you until the morning. I was going home the next day. I saw whatever it was just standing outside the curtain rail of the hospital bed watching us. One nurse came to take my vitals and I heard her gasp and she shoved on the lights, blinding me in the process. She apologized quickly and said she's had a long night and apologized again for blinding me. She did a full look of the room before she left and made sure to leave the bedside table lamp on. The weird thing that happened was the first night of me being out of hospital and at home with our newborn baby, it was there in the corner. He said he saw it look at me and then look down and into the crib and then just turned to leave. Posted by u/mrbeaver3601. Toddler possessed, true experience. I'm gonna get straight to the point and keep it short. Don't want this to be boring and long. In 2012 we went to Pakistan on holiday and my cousin was 1 year old at the time. So my 1-year-old cousin was sitting and playing under a tree in the backyard with others when he started acting weird. He wasn't acting normal and kept screaming and behaving weird. So at night, I was woken up by my aunt's mother-in-law as she wakes up at night and prays. My aunt, cousin mum, and her mother-in-law and me saw my 1-year-old cousin crawling away and saw him just crawling outside towards the tree he was playing under. My aunt started crying but her mother-in-law said to her, "Don't go after him." Then I realized why she said not to go after him. My 1-year-old cousin was still asleep in the same room and whatever that was crawling away and going back to the tree looking like my cousin was the thing that temporarily possessed him and was returning back to the tree. The next morning he was completely normal and it never happened again. I saw that thing crawling away with my own eyes and wouldn't have known it wasn't my cousin. You can believe this story or not, but 3 people saw it happen including me. Posted by Franicoli. My neighbor's house is haunted and I think it's affecting me. A little backstory, we had a neighbor who was very weird and gave off a bad vibe. This guy would always be walking around the house at night, making noise as he opened his rusty side gate in the pitch silence. We'd hear a woman in the basement at times arguing, but I never saw a woman with him. He had a dog that he used to beat with a 2x4 until he broke his legs. Things started to get weirder when his dog was poisoned and died. He blamed it on us for some reason, but we have our own dog that we love very much. Why on earth would we do that? Then someone put sugar in his gas tank. Blamed it on us. The last time we saw him, he was hanging out with some sketchy people. That same weekend he told us he's going fishing and we never saw him ever again. He died. Apparently blew his brains out. Now to the house. In the 10 years we've been here, there have seen 4 different people in that house. All following the same pattern. They move in, they're great people, months go by, they start getting weird, their life seems to fall apart and they move out. Our current neighbors have been there for some time and same thing. The scariest part, remember I mentioned he used to open the gate at night and make noise? It still opens to this day at night. Current owners have changed the locks, had someone bless the house, all sorts of things. You might be thinking, what does this have to do with me? Well, my room is in the basement, on the wall facing my neighbor's house. My window is right beside the side gate. Ever since I moved down there, I feel like I slowly started to feel worse and worse until I recently moved upstairs, on the opposite side of the house. There was a point where I couldn't wake up no matter how much I slept. I was having issues with energy all day. I turned it into my home office, thought maybe I was spending too much time where I slept so I converted it. Now, every time I spend a few minutes down there, I feel a choking sensation followed by a dull headache. You know where you put your fingers to check your pulse? It feels like someone is squeezing my neck in that spot on both sides, almost restricting blood flow to my head causing a headache. I hate that room. I hate its vibe. But it sucks because it's such a nice room. I spent a lot of money on it to make it my own and now I can't even be inside of it. Do you think my neighbor's house has something to do with it? Is there anything I can do to clean that room? Posted by Sabzo71. Saw an angel and potentially my future son when I was 6 years old. When I was 6 years old, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw a girl in a white dress praying at the bottom of my room. We had an old dresser table back then with a statue of Our Lady of Roses on it. The girl, who I immediately thought was an angel, sat on a stool. We didn't own this stool, which is random, and she was facing the holy statue, her back to me. But I could also see her reflection in the mirror. She had a peaceful aura about her. However, I crept out of my bed, and darted past her and ran to my parents' room. But I couldn't get their bedroom door open for some reason. I crept back to my room. I didn't go back in, but I peeked around the corner to see if she was still there. She was, and she was praying silently and didn't look at me or anything. But this time there was also a baby there, just on the dresser table laughing and smiling away at me, and I should add it was not in a scary way at all. The baby wore a blue t-shirt. I didn't go back into my room that night, and since I couldn't open my parents' door, I slept on the stairs. The next morning, I told my parents what happened. They told me that the girl was probably my guardian angel praying for me and that the baby was probably my younger sister's angel. Being 6, I thought that was strange because I thought the baby was a boy, in the blue t-shirt, and ever since I still didn't believe he was her angel. Fast forward to now. I'm 29 years old and I had my first baby boy last year. And he looks the exact same as that little baby all those years ago, and he doesn't stop laughing and smiling. He's the happiest baby, and I think the angel baby was my son Lowell. Anyways, this experience has stayed with me all my life and the reason why I can't doubt God's existence. I've seen it with my own eyes. I can't ever doubt it. There's so many scary stories here on Reddit, so I hope this one will maybe show you that there are good experiences too. Posted by you/stuff_ such. Premonition before my mother passed. This is long, so I apologize. My mother was very sick for several years before she passed. She contracted mononucleosis at 50, and when this is contracted as an adult, it can cause a complication of organ failure. She needed a liver transplant and was also having issues with low kidney function due to the illness. She had been in the hospital the entire month before she passed. She seemed like she was getting better, well enough to survive a transplant. She was transferred to the hospital to get her ready for the transplant, but contracted COVID and took a turn for the worst. Now for the premonition part. She had been transferred to a hospital that was a 2.5-hour drive, so I could no longer visit her every day like I had been. I was planning on visiting her the following Saturday, but on the Wednesday before, I just had a feeling that I had to take the next day off to go see her because she might not make it until Saturday. I sent a message to my boss and put in a request for the next day, Thursday, off. That same night, around midnight, I got a call from my stepdad. He spoke with the hospital. They didn't think she would make it. Her lungs were failing. They had to put her on a ventilator. There was also a blood clot that cut off the blood to her colon and intestines. We had to get there. I called my brother, we drove there, got there around 2 or 3 a.m. She couldn't open her eyes or speak but could nod her head yes and no. She could still hear us. We got to say goodbye and how much we loved her before she lost consciousness. She passed that Friday afternoon. She didn't make it to Saturday. The second part is more like what I would consider a real premonition, not just a bad feeling. This is from my brother. He said I could share it. He had a dream we were at our grandma's house. There was a bunch of brush at the end of their driveway, there is not in real life, and there was a deer out there. My grandpa, who just passed a little over a year prior, gave my brother a chainsaw to clear the brush and told him to take care of the deer. We all had to agree at the hospital to have them turn the machines off. Her intestines were deteriorating. She needed surgery, but she would never survive. She couldn't get the surgery and she couldn't live if she didn't get the surgery. We were able to ask my mother multiple times beforehand if she wanted everything off, and she vehemently nodded her head yes, and it was in her living will that she didn't want a ventilator. Right after the funeral we went to my grandma's house. At the end of the driveway was a doe. I walked out, got just 10 feet from it and got a few pictures. It wasn't afraid of me, and when I looked at it, I felt like it was my mom checking on us. I'm interpreting this as our grandpa was telling us to clear the way, clear the brush, so the deer could get free. Posted by you/snoo. Being grabbed after helping people on this sub. Sorry it's not lengthier, but this has become one of my safe spaces to just share this stuff without someone else putting a lens on it. Even though professionally I'm a chaplain who deals with the supernatural, I'm surrounded by people who load and assume stuff about my experiences. I don't know who I help that has something seriously powerful attached to them, which is scary enough as it is. I try and dismiss this kind of stuff, and my first rationalization was bugs, but I can't really ignore or dismiss it anymore. There's a room we're next to that I've written about. I still follow my practices, warding with prayer, crosses, incense, Bibles, but there is 2 spots of faltering. Number 1 is when I'm at my computer desk, my legs are up against the wall to the creepy room. Several times throughout the hours I'm sitting at my computer I can feel a hand grab or slightly yank my foot. It's cold, it's also incredibly annoying. The other spot is when I'm sleeping and my leg is uncovered. I get small yanks as I'm falling asleep, or some that wake me up. Same deal, ice cold for the briefest second, really weak grab or yank, and then nothing. I woke up with random scratches up my leg one morning, but I'm going to assume it was my dog. Anyway, just offloading, and appreciate people reading this. My partner refuses to talk about it, because she's terrified of the paranormal. Posted by Big Pengo. I want to share this with someone. My dad died a few days after Christmas from a long, hard illness. I knew he wasn't doing well and convinced him to move near me and help take care of him the last year he was alive. I lived very far from other family for school, and he was living in a different region as well. There were definitely moments that I was overwhelmed and frustrated, and I was constantly worried about him, plus it was very difficult to see him becoming sicker. I stayed next to his bed the night I knew he was dying and provided morphine his nurse gave me every couple hours so he was not in pain. I felt his last heartbeats. I've spent a lot of moments near his vase of ashes crying the past couple months. Last night, I was alone and placed my hand on his ashes and told him I love him and missed him very much. I apologized if I ever caused stress for him, as I was sometimes overwhelmed and trying to handle school. I told him it had been hard for me to see him so sick, and again that I loved him so much. I placed his wedding ring on top of his vase. In the middle of the night, I had a dream I was just walking by myself on my college campus, not really going anywhere specific. Through a crowd of students, I saw him. He was standing still and waving to me. He didn't look sick or weak, he was wheelchair bound by the end. He looked healthy and young like he did when I was a child. I ran to him and hugged him. I looked at him in shock and he asked if I was okay. I said yes, Dad, you died. I'm so sorry. I never thought I'd see you again. He smiled and laughed and said I know. It's okay, I'm not sad about it. It's all okay. We then sat together on a nearby bench in the warm sun and talked and cuddled. I'm not sure what we talked about, but it felt like happy things. And then I woke up. I feel calm and comforted. I feel like my dad may have been trying to comfort me.